My name is Christopher Dunn. I'm a manufacturing engineer. I've been in manufacturing for 47 years, and I work at Danville Metal Stamping in Danville, Illinois. I've been here for 22 years. Most of the time that I've spent in manufacturing has been in aerospace. At Danville Metal Stamping, we make gas turbine engine parts for flight hardware, jet engines, stationary power systems, and some military hardware. The heart of my work has been working with precision and working with very close tolerances to microns. We generally work in inches in the United States, though I know that the metric system is in Europe, but our tolerances are essentially within a few microns. We work with all kinds of shapes, all kinds of geometries, contoured, complex surfaces, such as what you would find in a jet engine, airfoil shapes, and all different kinds of contours. In this particular industry, we have to work with extreme, very, very close precision because of standards, international standards, and also geometric and dimensional standards that are very important for a safety and functional aspect so that the engines are functioning properly. So precision and accuracy, precision is a part of my life. It's what I have done for over 40 years. I had read a lot of literature about the accuracy and the precision that the builders of the Great Pyramid used to build the Great Pyramid. When I went to Egypt in 1986, I was taken by surprise when walking along the Giza Plateau and noticing some what I would witness with my naked eye, objects or stone objects that appeared to be extremely precise. Unfortunately, at that time, in 1986, I did not have any instruments with me or any way to measure them or to determine with certainty that there was a high degree of precision. They just had the appearance of it. Working in manufacturing, the heart of manufacturing is precision. Things have to be made to conform to certain standards, particularly for a machine to function, like a jet engine or a gas turbine engine. It has to function properly, and it requires precision. In manufacturing, we use granite surface plates with extremely flat surfaces. And when I went to Egypt in '86, I was very surprised to see very, very flat pieces of granite. And going back and measuring the granite to determine just the precision of the granite, what I found was a similar precision that we would find on a surface plate in a manufacturing company. So that was a surprise. The instruments I took were precise to within 1/10,000th of an inch. They were what we would normally associate with a gauge-like precision that we would use on our own granite surface plates. So when I measured the granite in Egypt, it was a surprise to find surfaces that were the same, to that order of precision. Now, why would they require such a high order of precision on objects that seemingly were only used for building? That is an open question. The answer to that, there may be several, but obviously they had the capability to do it, and they had the perception or the concept of precision and saw a need to introduce it into their work. The perfection and the complexity of the surfaces that I found in Egypt indicated that they were using an unknown methods of production, because the methods that are described by Egyptologists and using the tools that are supposedly in the ancient Egyptian toolbox are not capable of producing that kind of work. So there seems to be a gap between what is real, what is actually on the ground, and what we are given to understand about that ancient culture. So in 1986, and noticing a order of precision with the naked eye that was surprising to me. And going back to Egypt 8 times, and each time I was actually finding out more information about different objects, using a different range of equipment and instruments to measure them. I found that they had an order of precision that is uncommon in any era for being on a building site. Also noticed very complex surfaces, precise surfaces, and a geometry. It seems like there is an order of geometry that we don't give credit to the ancient Egyptians. The Greeks knew phi, knew pi, and knew the Pythagoras had the Pythagorean triangle. We noticed its presence within the pyramids and also at Luxor with the Ramses statues. So all of these elements coming together seem to draw a picture of a culture that is not fully understood at the moment. And it does require a lot more intelligence and other minds around the world actually studying this problem because of the open question. What was this culture about? What we see on the surface is just the skeleton of a civilization, the nature of which we have no understanding of, because we don't know that we have no infrastructure. What we see is the result of methods and tools and possibly machines that existed that are no longer there. And then when we look at the intelligence behind the objects themselves in the geometry and the perfection, the question then is, with such an intelligence, such a brilliance in design, how can we say that they did not apply that brilliance and that intelligence to design sophisticated tools? And we also find that there are marks, studying marks in granite, that show the use of saws 35 feet in diameter, drills that were able to drill through granite at an incredible feed rates. So there are hints of a much higher order of manufacturing, a much higher order of production and efficiency in cutting basalt, granite, very, very hard igneous rocks. Not just simple surfaces like flat surfaces, square boxes, square within an order of perfection that you would find, certainly may find in a manufacturing company, but you wouldn't find on a building site. And all of these speak of a technology, an ancient technology that we don't quite understand yet. But we have to be able to restore that and elevate this ancient culture, the ancient Egyptians, if they actually built the pyramids, but to restore them in the order of progress in the world. And right now, we see them in a linear fashion. If we go back, we come forward from the Egyptians to the Greeks, the Romans, the Western civilization, we see that progress in our history books. But then going further back into ancient Egypt, it seems like the sophistication of the intelligence and the capabilities of that culture were much higher, and they must have been a decline to then start to come back and rebuild and regain that lost knowledge. And I think that's the exciting part about this, is that we are now regaining that lost knowledge. And I think it's important to restore the ancient Egyptian heritage and put them in the correct order in the world in terms of their knowledge, their sophistication, and their science. To produce these artifacts, the tools that are in an ancient Egyptian toolbox that Egyptologists tell us were used stone and copper. These are the tools that are necessary to determine the precision on the artifacts. These are modern tools. A precision square and a straight edge. These tools do not exist in the archaeological record. And yet, in order to maintain the precision on the objects, you would need something like this. But they don't exist. It seems that when we go further back in time into the ancient Egyptian culture and their artifacts in the prehistory, the more precise the objects are. And so the more precise your instruments have to be to inspect them. The further you go back in time, we find a greater precision in the products. That is surprising. Why is that? There are no answers today that satisfy. Normally the tools that are used to manufacture something or fashion something are not shipped with the product. They don't stay with the product. They're either carried off or the product is carried off. So you don't find the tools near the product. I wouldn't expect tools to survive from 5,000, 45,000 years ago. For many reasons. They may have been cut up or used to do something else, or carried off. They still may exist somewhere under the sands of the Sahara. I don't know. But they don't exist. Now, to say that there is no evidence that the tools existed is actually incorrect. The evidence is in the objects themselves. And essentially what they are, that's circumstantial evidence, where you can look at the fit, the finish, you can look at the geometries, and you can determine with reasonable certainty what the minimum requirements would be to actually recreate them. And in the case of many of these objects, you require a fairly sophisticated and advanced technology. So we're left with a huge question. Where are the tools? And the development of the civilization and how it actually was developed to the level where they would build the tools and use them on these marvelous objects that we see. It doesn't surprise me that the tools don't exist. I mean, it's a matter of looking into prehistory and recognizing that they must have existed. I'm not surprised that they don't exist. After 30 centuries, things can deteriorate. They can, you could take iron. You go into Indiana and look in a ravine, and somebody's dumped a car in there, and it's almost rusted to nothing. So, I mean, there is ferrous materials would have rusted away. To go back and say, okay, in order for us to accept the fact that these are precise, you have to be able to show me a machine. That is a bad argument. It's a false argument. It's like saying this doesn't exist unless this exists, when clearly what we have is the evidence in front of us that these must have existed. So what happens? Well, we try to minimize and marginalize what we see. This is what the people who want to keep things intact, to keep the history books written as they are, will say, oh, it's not as important as you think it is. Or maybe your measurements were bad. Okay, maybe they were. Then take somebody else and measure them. It's natural when we look in Egypt and we see that kind of sophistication to wonder whether it exists elsewhere in the world. And in 2005, I traveled to Peru and Bolivia and went to Machu Picchu, Ollantaytambo, Sacsayhuaman, and also Tiwanaku and Pumapunku. Found in those places evidence of sophisticated culture that were using similar precision in the surface of the stone. Square corners, flat surfaces, and really enigmatic shapes that don't seem to have any real purpose, or is not one that we quite understand. Certainly it raises a lot of questions about the ancient cultures all over the world in prehistory, and that there is something going on that we have no knowledge of right now. These ancient cultures had developed tools that were able to cut very efficiently different kinds of stone. Very, very hard stone, igneous rock, volcanic rock, and soft limestone. But the tools were very efficient and capable, and also very precise. The evidence shows, I mean, it indicates that the tools that they used were precise. Now, one of the points that I would like to make is that a lot of the question on ancient Egyptian artifacts and the Peruvian artifacts is what materials did they use to cut? In other words, what was available at that time? A lot of the precise geometries and complex geometries. The question that needs to be asked also along with that is, what was guiding the tool? Because the human hand is not that precise. So it had to have assistance. Today we have mechanical assistance to guide tools to cut complex shapes and contours, such as we find at Egypt and in Peru. Many of the objects that I found, in my opinion, cannot be done by hand. So they must have had some kind of technology or technique or assistance in doing them. Technology has advanced since the time of William Flinders Petrie, and now we're able to take different tools and instruments into Egypt and take measurements. One of the advances is digital photography and analyzing shapes in the computer to determine geometries and precision. In Petrie's time, Petrie went to take his measurements, he took a different range of instruments. So he probably didn't have the precision square and straight edge that I take and take my measurements. But he was approaching it as a surveyor. Taking measurements in the computer on the photographs of the Ramses head indicated that there was a precision to within a third of a millimeter or 10,000ths of an inch if that head was a normal head around the jawline. So measuring one side to the other, we see that there was a high order of precision. Certainly not one that you could achieve unless you had some sophisticated tools to cut and measure. When you look at a sophisticated object like the Ramses face or the Ramses head, what you're viewing in 2 dimensions is actually a 3-dimensional object. So the precision is not in just 2 axes. It's in 3 axes, the X, Y, Z axis. And maintaining that accuracy and that precision in 3 dimensions is what sets that piece apart from all the rest and causes us to say, what tools were they using? We don't know. Nobody can determine what tools we use. We can theorize, but essentially when theorizing we have to show, we have to be able to demonstrate that our methods are true and accurate. In looking at the Ramses statue with the naked eye, it just has the appearance of quality. It has a very unusual quality to it and compared to other statues. But the true nature of it, really you cannot determine that unless you have specialized technology or specialized instruments to be able to measure it properly. The method that I used with the camera and modern computers and modern cameras is one way to look at it, only in a 2-dimensional way. There are other more sophisticated pieces of equipment that can look at it in a 3-dimensional way, and that would be the next step. It would be for a more precise study, gathering even greater information from the statue. What I present in telling you about the precision of the objects is just to present the facts as an engineer, what I have measured. In terms of who did it, why they did it, and when it was done, other specialists need to answer those questions. I'm happy to collaborate with anybody on this topic, on this question. Egyptologists, archaeologists, geologists, anybody. And if they would contact me, I'd be more than happy to consult. But they don't have to come to me. They can go to their engineering department at their universities and talk to the professors there. Or they could go even further and go out into industry and talk to other manufacturing engineers. They don't have to come to Chris Dunn. Information is passed to our children in universities, in high school and universities, that tell a story about our past. And that story is not necessarily correct. People are paid good money to pass these stories or these tales to our kids. And as an engineer, I am not satisfied with what our kids are being taught in college or in school regarding the manufacturing methods of the ancient Egyptians. They do not they do not satisfy. And many of my peers who I've consulted with over the years are not satisfied either. And so I think it would be appropriate for Egyptologists to gather more information about this topic, examine the facts, and consult with engineers, consult with professionals out in industry. Not necessarily me, but somebody at their university. Because what is being taught is incorrect. This evidence of a sophistication and knowledge in manufacturing and crafting very precise objects is all over the world. And my question is, why don't we want to examine that further and bring to light more information and the truth about these ancient cultures? The evidence of precision is clear. The reason for it is unclear. And what it was used for is open to speculation. We can put all speculation and all theories aside. What I think we need to establish, though, is and communicate to the public is what these civilizations were capable of doing. And that hasn't been done properly. The explanations, they can come later when we involve specialists. But the facts need to be given first. The subject of how the ancient Egyptians and how ancient cultures did this work requires serious study, because only through serious study can you come up with reasonable facts that will where you avoid unreasonable fantasies or speculation about what happened. We need to have a metrology studies on these objects to find out their true nature, to quantify what we see, what I infer from the artifacts, but to quantify them and say, this is within 2 microns, this is within 3 microns, to be able to say with certainty what it is. Right now, we just have that hint of a perfection, a quality that is uncommon. But it needs to be firmly established for the archaeological record, the historical record, so that future generations can look at it and say, Ramses' head, an amazing piece, and crafted to within 10,000ths of an inch. Right now we can take a photograph and say, yeah, it looks like it might be within 10,000ths of an inch. However, a more detailed study would reveal the truth. There are objects in museums, in the Cairo Museum, the Petra Museum, the museum in London, that would be classified traditionally as ritual objects or religious objects, but perhaps they had another function. We would like to explore that, and I think it needs to be explored that not everything is a ritual object, that they could have another purpose. Some objects are easy to understand, as far as a vase, certainly very beautiful, very finely crafted, but you can understand their function. Other objects like the 3-lobed schist bowl in the Cairo Museum, it's very unusual shape. It does not lend to the speculation that it was a ritual object or even a dish, because of its geometries, very complex geometries. So something along that line where you find an object that is unusual, we need to explore further what other purposes it may have served. As an engineer, going to Egypt is an exercise in humility. Essentially, you look at a capability that we stand back in awe and say, how did they do that? They're incredible feats of engineering, incredible feats of manufacture. So to go to Egypt, an engineer can learn how to be humble. If we go into the Great Pyramid and into the King's Chamber, here we have a chamber that is crafted out of granite, independent from the structure. Some of the granite blocks weigh up to 70 tons. And it's engineers who actually study this particular chamber come away from there thinking there had to have been some other reason, other purpose for the chamber. Because of the features of it, the precision of the granite, the shafts coming into the chamber, and also the amount of granite. The granite beams above the chamber, there is about 43 giant granite beams, and these are in a series of 5 layers. Now, what is the reason for 5 layers? Conventionally, they tell us because the king wanted a flat ceiling. So these are relieving chambers. Well, to an architect or a structural engineer, when they look at that, they say 4 of those layers are redundant. That's 4 too many layers. If you want a flat ceiling, all you need are the 2 gable blocks and a stringer across, and you have a flat ceiling. So there is some design in there for another purpose. It is not just to have a flat ceiling, it's for something, I think, a little more important, because when you consider that they brought this granite 500 miles from Aswan and crafted it to a high order of precision, put it in place 175 feet up inside the pyramid. It raises all kinds of questions in our mind. We struggle with the concept of why do they do it and how do they do it. And the why is still an open question. How? We have no idea. We can speculate, but nobody knows. Nobody's been able to demonstrate it. We don't know. In studying the Great Pyramid for many years, I have to conclude that it was designed specifically with nothing left to chance. Every feature in the Great Pyramid had a reason. A lot of the theories about the Great Pyramid include chance or symbolism or the pharaoh's will, or it's this way because the pharaoh willed it. I discount those because it's too practical. The pyramid speaks of practicality, and it speaks of a precision, the precision of a machine rather than a building. In my opinion, the Great Pyramid had a function. Obviously, it must have had a function. The investment of time, labor, the investment of resources in building it was very significant. The time that it would take to build it, tremendous resources, had to have had a very, very important purpose. If you believe that it was built just to house a body, then you can welcome to your belief. I don't believe that. It had to have had a much higher purpose and a function that gave benefit to the civilization that built it. Through many years of study, I've come to understand the Great Pyramid a lot more, and I am now of the opinion that this pyramid, the pyramids in Egypt, had a much higher purpose, but it was related to a holistic function that benefited society. Functioning as a machine and being related to the earth, it provided a benefit by being in harmony with the earth, being in harmony with the universe, and also being in harmony with all people. So the harmony of the pyramids is very real. It has been measured, and it is a very credible purpose for the pyramid. Now, the Egyptologists might say that, and this is a new term that I've heard lately, is that the pyramids were ascension machines. So even the Egyptologists are now introducing the concept of a machine with the pyramids. But these are ascension machines for one person. Okay, maybe we could take that and say an ascension machine, but not just for one person, but for all people to elevate their consciousness. Is that a possibility? It needs to be studied further, I think. And what I stated is only an opinion. It's just what I feel, and intuitively what I have thought and what I've been brought to think after being studying the subject for many years and being in Egypt and reading a lot of material about the Great Pyramid. So it's just an opinion. There are many opinions about the pyramid, but the facts don't change. Now the truth, that needs to be studied. But first of all, we have to know the facts and recognize the facts. And what is in our way, the roadblock in our way, is our inability to recognize this ancient culture as being advanced. We don't give them credit.